Greetings, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and welcome back to another video. Today I am coming at you with something I haven't done for a wee while, but something a little bit lighter, kind of, because I have had a week. And I don't have the emotional capacity to do anything super heavy. So today we are going to be looking through the subreddit The Right Can't Meme, because it's like just the perfect mixture of like, oh my god, shut up, and also like kind of funny, you know? So that's what we're doing today. But before we do get into it, I would like to take a moment to say thank you to today's patron of the day, Jordan. I love and appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for all of your support throughout the past several months. I appreciate you, and I hope that you enjoy this video. And if anyone else would like to become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/savvycat or click the top link in the description. And if you want to hear more about that, stick around till the end, where I'll tell you a little bit more information. All right. Anyway, let's get into the terrible, unfunny memes that conservatives seem to find funny. So this is a person driving a car, and it says, joining a dank-looking meme group. And then a sign saying, remember guys, no bullying, transphobia, race it, and then reversing and backing away, so leaving said meme group. Yeah, see, okay, here's the deal here. It's really not hard to be funny without, like, being really offensive and racist, misogynistic, transphobic, etc. Like, it's really easy to be funny without all those things, and the fact that your humor relies solely on it and centers around it is just a really good tell of character, because like they're not funny. And I know that humor is subjective, but like when you are hurting entire groups of people and dragging down like oppressed minorities, it's not very funny, because that has real world repercussions and is based very heavily on reality and stereotypes that cause further harm, which isn't very funny. The funniest type of jokes are like when you're laughing at yourself. Like, I love jokes about like being gay and shit, but only coming from queer people, because then they're laughing at themselves. It's not like straight people being homophobic, you know? Like, it's not a difficult thing. The best humor is at the expense of one's self. So here is a person walking through some farmland saying, what a terrible polluting environment. And then it is like wind farms and solar panels and like a dead bird, and it's like barren and the grass is all dead. And that's saying, that's better. And a note is that they're wearing an XR shirt. So obviously this is anti-Extinction Rebellion, anti-climate activism, etc. So I have a few points here. Firstly, number one, you do realize that farmland was initially like rainforest and bushland and like a lot of like ecosystems and trees. Do you know how many species are on the brink of extinction or are extinct because of our deforestation for farming? Because it's a lot. It's a lot. And do you know how much CO2 comes from farms and livestock? Also, a lot. Like a lot. Like one of the number one contributors of carbon emissions is from livestock. And then to go even further from that, over like 60% of all crops grown in the world, like 60% of all of our fucking food is fed to livestock. And then on top of that, a majority of our clean water is also given to livestock. Do you know how bad for the environment farming is? It is ridiculous. It is one of the worst things to the environment. Back home in New Zealand, we're known for our like lovely waterways and shit. So many of them have been polluted by our livestock and by our cattle. There are so many lovely rivers that are like poison now. Whereas wind farms and solar panels are not being put on that land, all right? They're not being put in place of like forest. We're not deforesting. We're not chopping trees down and ruining ecosystems to put in wind turbines and solar panels. Most of the time, they're going in places where there is nothing. They're going in deserts. They're going in like very large, empty places where the weather and things suit said energy source, like in windy places and shit. They're not destroying grass and ruining ecosystems. That's what farming does. So, yeah. The top post is correct. The bottom one you made up. This is a drawing of a queer person who has like a mohawk and their heads are shaved with like a rainbow and then a pink mohawk, and they're holding a pride flag and they're being hugged by, I'm assuming, like a Christian man, and it says, "I don't want you to go to hell when you die." And this this reminds me of this time back in 2019. So I was 19 and I worked in the mall and I was walking to work. I was like literally like one shop down from work. I was so close, I could see it. And this lady just came and like grabbed my arm. She looked at me and she said, "It's not too late. It's not too late for you. God loves you." And I was like, what? She's like, "I'm going to church right now. You can come with me. I can take you. I'm going right now. You're always welcome. Come with me." And I was standing there like, I have to go to work. I'm sorry. I have to go to work. And she's like, "God loves you. It's not too late." And I'm like, okay, I'm leaving now. And then I went to work and was late, but my boss thought it was kind of funny. And so that was an experience. And like to this I say, like, why do you care? Why do you care if I go to hell? You know, like it doesn't impact you at all. Let me choose to live my life how I want to live it. You say that you care about me, but you like making my living life bad is not worth making my afterlife good, especially if I don't believe in said afterlife, and you cannot enforce that and push that upon me. Please keep it to yourself. I do not care for it. Just leave people alone. Don't grab people's arms while they're walking to work. It's not cool. Boundaries, okay? Here is a little comic of a gas stove and someone getting mad saying, "That's gas." And then the respondent being like, "But it identifies as electric," because conservatives have one joke and it's never been funny, but they still keep making it. Get a new joke, please. Anything else. It's so boring. It's tight. Are you not sick of this joke yet? Will you ever be sick of this joke? Move on. Then, gay rights. Now, trans rights. Later, pedo rights. Okay, so, you know, did you know they've already tried that? Are you aware that minor attracted people, aka MAPs, have already tried this shit? A few years ago, they tried to insert themselves into the queer community. They tried to make a case for themselves. They tried searching for empathy and being like, "Please, we can't help it. We're just trying to live our lives. We are valid." That was already tried. And the queer community are the people who shut them down and said, "No, fuck off. Fuck off. Get out of our space. You aren't welcome here. No, go away." Right? This is a thing that's already happened, and queer people are the ones who told them to fuck off. Because it's not about just like everyone is valid, every type of relationship is valid. That's not what it is. It's about consent, right? 2 adult men can consent to being in a relationship together. 2 adult women can consent to being in a relationship together. A child cannot consent to being in a relationship with an adult. A trans person is the only one who is affected by the decision that they make, so therefore the consent is there. A child is not doing anything super life-altering at a young age. They have found their identity and they are living as someone who is true to their identity, and the most they're doing is something like puberty blockers, which is reversible if they decide to stop taking them, and it just prevents the process of puberty happening. It's been proven to have positive effects on trans kids. It's been proven to be helpful. Trans healthcare and support for trans kids, etc., has no negative side effects. It's been time and time over shown that it has positive effects on people. Whereas preying on children has no positive effects at all, because a child is unable to consent because children trust adults, right? They don't know what they're getting into, and they're very easily taken advantage of in that sense. And so when an adult tells them to do something, a lot of the time, they're going to do it. And contrary to popular belief, no adult is telling children to be trans. They're just saying they can be if they want to be, which is not the same thing. I don't have enough money to pay my student loans or buy a house. And then the monthly budget is DoorDash, $1,400, booze, $250, weed, $200, body art, $100, streaming, $100, OnlyFans, $100, Funko Pops, $100, Apple iStore, $100, video games, $200, pop concert, $200. Those were some boring numbers. So a total of $2,750. There are several things wrong with this, starting with the prices they've given these things. Where can I get body art for only $100? That is incredibly cheap body art, even for a piercing. That's that's quite cheap. And for a tattoo, you're not getting a tattoo for $100. I'm sorry, that's not happening. You're not getting a tattoo for $100. That's just not happening at all. Half of these are so funny. I love that you're implying someone spends $100 on Funko Pops every single month, $100 at the Apple store every single month, and a $200 concert ticket every single month. That's hilarious. I love that. That's brilliant. This whack budget aside, are you saying that you don't buy anything? Are you saying that you don't buy booze? Are you saying that you don't have any subscriptions to anything? You don't pay to go to concerts or events or anything? You are sitting here and saying that you don't do any of that? Because if you do any of those things, you aren't allowed to sit here and criticize. But I already own a house. I don't have to buy a house. Yeah, and how did you get that house in the first place? You lived in an economy where wages were more fair and you could afford to live. Possibly. That's possibly why you already own a house and they don't. This whole attitude thing of you aren't allowed to spend money if you are poor is so ridiculous and so sad. It's you aren't allowed to complain about how expensive houses are and how expensive student loans are if you're buying things with the money that you work for. Maybe you should save every single dollar you earn and have a miserable life, and then you'll be able to afford a house. I shouldn't have to sacrifice my happiness just to be able to have something that should be accessible to me. If you don't like paying high rent, why don't you move to the middle of nowhere where it's cheaper? Because I don't want to live in the middle of nowhere. That's why. And I shouldn't have to in order to just be able to continue to live my life. I should be able to live places that I want to. That should just be available. I should be allowed to do that. I should be able to do that. If I am working every day of my life, I should be able to get tattoos if I want to. I should be able to spend $1,400 on DoorDash. If I am being forced to spend my entire life working, I want to make it as enjoyable as possible, And that means I'm going to spend my money on shit that makes me happy. And if that means I can't buy a house, then that's fucking shit. And I should be able to do that. But that's the sacrifice I'm going to have to make because I don't want to spend my life miserable on the chance that maybe I could buy a shitty house at some point. I don't want to spend years wasting my life working just so I can buy a house and then keep working just so I can pay off that mortgage. I'm sorry, I'm not fucking doing that. And I shouldn't have to do that. I should be able to spend money on things that I like and things that make me happy and also be able to live comfortably. And that should be expected. That's how it should be. And I'm sorry if that's not what you were able to do, but then surely you're unhappy about that too. And surely since it made you unhappy, you'd want to change that. Because I fucking do. I don't want to live my life just working and working and working. That's so sad. Let people spend their money on whatever they want to spend it on. And if they can't afford to buy a house, I promise it's not because they bought delivery food. They can't afford a house because people have pushed the housing market up so much. The cost of living has skyrocketed and wages have stayed the same. That's why people can't afford houses. Not because they're spending money on DoorDash and tattoos. Okay? So shut the fuck up. It's a shame science and tech ed courses are being killed off in favor of a liberal education. And it's a school holding LGBT studies and saying, I can't fit LGBT studies in the schedule. And the schedule is science and tech ed, English, and maths. And so the schools are like, or can I? And they remove science and tech ed and replace it with LGBT studies. My first question is, what is tech ed? That's not a class I ever did. What's tech ed? Is that learning how computers and shit work? That's new, or not a thing that exists in New Zealand at least. I've never heard of tech ed before in my life. And also, why is this like primary school? What school is this? This is important to the conversation. Like, it's not really important, but I am intrigued. Is this for like primary school? Is this for high school? Also, art and shit is also already on there. If your school isn't doing like creative stuff, that I'm so sorry. Your school should really be doing creative stuff. My primary school, every single Friday was art day. We just did art on Friday. That was the whole day. It was just art. It was fun. It was great. I loved it. Regardless of that whole conversation I just had with myself there, as far as I'm aware, this isn't this isn't a thing, and that's not a thing. As like I said, I've never heard of tech ed. I don't think LGBT studies is like a compulsory class that's happening in any school. You might cover some like queer history in like social studies or in a history class, sure. Or there might be some queer literature in English. There might be some word problems in maths where it's like Susie and her wife, Jerame. That's not a name. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, like there might be shit like that. That's not queer focused studies. That's just using inclusive language and normalizing queerness as a thing so kids feel comfortable about being themselves. It's not only making queer kids feel more comfortable within themselves and more normal, it's also normalizing the idea of queerness so that kids know that it's normal and won't pick on people who do come out as queer. Because if it's a topic that is avoided, then a kid is going to feel abnormal in being queer. And then if they do come out, the kids around them also think it's abnormal, and that causes bullying because that person is different. If we talk about it as though it's a normal thing, which it is, not only does it make queer students more comfortable and feel more accepted and safe, it also creates a safer environment because they know that the people around them accept them and the people around them don't have a problem with it. That's why it's so important. It's for the safety and comfort of young queer people and just queer people in general, because it helps people understand and see it as just another relationship. It's just another person, because that's all queer people are. We're just people who love different people or who express ourselves differently, etc. That's all it is. And that's the way it should be talked about in school, in conversations. In the exact same way we talk about heterosexual couples in school. You don't change anything, you just include them in it. You don't like bring in a whole section about like, this is what being gay is, and like having an expansive lesson about it. You just include language and make queer stories more available, right? And that shouldn't be a problem. Like when I was at high school, for example, in year 12, in my biology class, when we studied vaccines for a term, we were specifically doing the HPV vaccine and like genital warts. And our teacher was always very inclusive in his language, talking about it being like, you know, how STIs are transmitted. And it was always like, whether it be genitals to genitals, hand to genitals, mouth to genitals, with one partner, two partners, whatever, it can be transmitted through bodily fluids in that way. It doesn't matter who you're with, doesn't matter how many people, it can happen, and it happens like this. And that's not making a big deal out of it. It's not making anyone uncomfortable. It's just stating what is true, that it affects anybody, and any type of relationship is just talked about how any other relationship is talked about. It's just normalizing that conversation, because queer stories are important, queer people are important, queer people are normal, and it should be talked about in a normal way. Nothing is being replaced. It's just being included. This is Stephanie Peterson, a 26-year-old teacher from Florida. She sent nudes, bought weed, and had sex with her 14-year-old student. The kid went to the police. What is wrong with our education system that we raise such ungrateful brats? So this is disgusting. I love the absolute hypocrisy here, though, of like all of this conversation about grooming and how we shouldn't be grooming children, and talking about queerness is grooming, and all drag queens are pedophiles and queer people are all pedophiles, etc. And then when a cis het woman legitimately preys upon a child, you turn it into a joke. And you say, lol, he should be grateful. Ha ha ha. That's every boy's dream. Lol. What the so you don't actually care. You don't care if your kids are sexually assaulted. You don't care if your kids are being groomed. You just hate queer people, which we already knew. We already knew that that was the actual motive. It's just that they hate queer people, not that they care about children. But to have such like stark, blatant like evidence of that is like so like shocking, just how openly like it's a joke, but also you're not really joking. It happens all the time with people being so invalidated in their trauma, especially like straight men and boys who were assaulted by women. They are constantly invalidated and like feel guilty and shameful about their experiences. And it's so fucked up and it's so gross. Assault is assault, you know? Like, you don't abuse children. It doesn't matter who you are on either end. You don't fucking do that. It's never okay, and it's never funny. That poor child, that poor kid. Stop pretending that you care about children, because you don't. This is between that like one woman that they always use for memes and Elon Musk. And it's a little cartoon thingy. Joe Biden should pay for my student loans. Get a job, sweetie. You can't say sweetie. It's offensive to diabetics. I wonder. Donald Trump, basic biology, guns, family values, patriarchy, Harry Potter. There she blows. And she like explodes because she's triggered. This meme has like so much and so little at the same time. It's like nothing happening, and yet so many words and so much happening. It's quite impressive, honestly. Like, did you think you did something here? Because nothing was done. There is no punchline here. There's not a punchline. I think that you need to take some time and then come back once you figure out what a joke is, and try again, because nothing here is funny. So, come back later. You know who taught you that Nazis were bad? The same people telling you drag kids are good. I don't know how you think that siding with Nazis is gonna get people on your side, but I assure you, that's not the way to go. I don't care the situation. You give me two options, I'm siding with whoever isn't the Nazi. Are you truly saying that you support, like, genocide of millions of people over just kids wearing what they want? Because, dude, what the fuck? Like, actually, what the fuck is wrong with you? I don't understand the stance of, like, being like, well, you know who told us Nazis were bad? The left. People who think it's okay to be drag queens. They said Nazis were bad, and they're obviously wrong about everything, so therefore Nazis weren't bad. They committed genocide. It doesn't take a fucking genius to realize what they did was bad. That should be something that everyone universally agrees upon, that is a bad thing to do. Not just bad, horrific. The worst thing a person could possibly do. Like, you don't have to pick a political side. That's just an awful thing to do. And if you disagree with that because you don't like drag queens, then you are the worst person. That's all I have to say about that. This was meant to be a lighthearted video. I got really carried away. I'm going to do one final one. African civilization 2,000 years ago, and it's like a clay hut. Aboriginal civilization 2,000 years ago, and it's like straw. It's not straw, but it's like a hut made out of branches and such. Native American civilization 2,000 years ago, and it's another form of hut. And then European civilization 2,000 years ago, and it's like a city. There's a few things wrong here, starting with places outside of Europe did have very well-developed cities, and places in Europe had villages that were more or less like the other examples used. You've just picked and chosen your examples here. And then completely separate to that is that, like, you don't have to enforce your standard of living upon everyone. The standard of living that we have created for ourselves is like what we're used to and what we think is good and what's best suited for us. But like, what other people have isn't any less than, you know? Maybe they're happy living like that. Maybe they're happier living a life without so much consumerism. Maybe they enjoy being able to just like spend their time doing other things that aren't like working at an office job just to pay rent, etc. You know, like maybe they're happier in a community-based area. We have created consumerism. We weren't designed for the lives that we live. We've created this stuff. It's not stuff that we need. We've decided that we need it to be happy, and we've created a society that tells us that we need it to be happy. But it doesn't for everyone. If it's not something that you've ever really had available to you, it's not something that you desire. And have you ever considered the fact that maybe they're better off that way? Maybe they're happier that way? The way that you live your life is not the best way to live life. Some people much prefer to live a much simpler life. And that's not bad. It doesn't make them any less than. It's just different. You are better than them. You are better than them. Consumerism has fucking ruined us. Capitalism has fucking ruined us. You know? Like, are you happy? Or do you wish you had more stuff? I went off the rails with this one. I wasn't meant to get so angry. I wasn't meant to talk for so long. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm apologizing. That's kind of what I do, right? That's what you're here for. Sometimes I just get a little bit carried away, and today was one of those days. Anyway, I hope that you did enjoy this video. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe and drop a comment too. I will try to reply to some of you. A massive thank you to my Sprout and Above patrons whose names are up on the screen right now. And a massive, massive thank you to my Kiwi Cat patrons, Wolf, Toulousk, Bobby, Josh, Mandy, Robbie, Ikazel, Kai, Jessica, Eldo, Ida, Quia Corey, Mick McKenna, Anna, Raven, Danielle, Elias, and Evie. I appreciate you all so, so much. Thank you so much for joining. If you would like to become a patron, you go to patreon.com/SavyCat or click the top link in the description. For as little as £1 a month, you get my videos a day early, as well as podcasts a week early. And then for £3 and up, you get things such as outtakes, bonus MIDI podcasts, a monthly live stream, and more. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, The Queer Kiwi, and Twitter, That Queer Kiwi. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Keep fighting. I love you. Mwah. When you close your eyes